I really appreciate you listening to the podcast here. Let's go get started. Hey, it's Friday, August 2nd, and we're back. And I wanted to thank everybody for joining me this week. I just wanted to do the podcast because it keeps me engaged and excited. And frankly, as I think a lot of you know, my life was kind of crappy. And I'm going to try to get these out roughly by noon every day. The only day that might be late is on Tuesdays because I have a ton of meetings always on Tuesdays. But I want to get these out by around noon every day if possible. And so I have also put together assigned kind of like the curriculum for the next few weeks because I want to make sure that I don't just ramble, and I want to really provide information that you may not know, you may know and have forgotten, or that makes you want to go learn more. So that's the goal, and that's what I'm going to try to do. And this weekend, specifically this weekend, because on Tuesday, we may have a vice presidential candidate announcement from the Democrats. So this weekend, I'm going to do 2 shows about the vice presidency. Not about the issues, but really about the role and just reminding everybody what a vice president does. One of the things that's super clear in looking at social media and people commenting and engagement starting to come back, thank God. I hate to say this, but even Twitter's getting slightly better because there's just more people in a great mood who are coming on and sharing great stuff. No, I'm not just talking politics, people. I mean, gardening pictures are back up and cooking stuff is back up and how people are dealing with the little mini microaggressions in their life and are trying to maintain a positive attitude. All that's kind of coming through and seeing a little more. So it's a much more positive experience. It's still probably not the social media most people would choose because it can be brutal. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm seeing the shift in attitude and how people are deciding they don't want to come at the world in fear and anger anymore. So we'll talk about the role of the vice presidency, and we will then also start to warm up over the next week and a half for the Democratic National Convention. The GOP had their convention really early, in my humble opinion. And so they kind of missed, I guess it wasn't targeted to me. So let's admit that I wasn't necessarily watching. That didn't seem like a way I wanted to spend my time. But conventions historically have always interested me because I'm a rhetorician and I studied rhetoric. And while I often joke that a rhetoric is a degree in bullshit, because it kind of is, much like a law degree in some ways. Sorry, it just pissed off every lawyer out there, but you have to be able to be persuasive and sometimes just make stuff up. Come on, that's what we do in marketing. That's rhetoric. And rhetoric looks a lot at messaging and how communication styles work. And so for me, speeches, believe it or not, interest me. It interests me to see how people put together the messages. It interests me to see how the audience responds. One of the weirdest things for me is when I'm actually picturing you when I do these podcasts, because I really like talking to large groups. I know, again, weird, but I get that's me. I like being weird and I'm really good at it. So I enjoy public speaking. And so it's interesting for me to watch conventions because they're nothing if not exercises in public speaking. And I do remember when Clint Eastwood brought out that empty chair and I couldn't figure out what he was doing. It was just a fascinating rhetorical event. So we're going to talk about the DNC because that one's coming, but we're really going to talk about conventions. I'm trying to do this from a place of civics to get people re-engaged and make you feel excited about participating. But at the same time, my bias will come through. So I'm sorry. I hope that you like joy and happiness because that's going to be my bias. But I'm not going to start with that today. Today, we're going to talk about voter registration again, and we're going to talk about it because something crappy happened overnight. Elon Musk has fired up a site that it's set up as a PAC, as a political action committee. And we should probably talk about PACs at some point too, because they're very interesting and they've changed a lot in the last few decades. But this political action committee, therefore, is supervised differently than a candidate's campaign. A political action committee has different rules about where the money can go, what they can do with the money, that sort of thing. So in this case, from understanding the story this morning, what they're trying to do, they being Elon Musk and probably Peter Thiel, because they are attached at the wallet, They are trying to reestablish what was the Cambridge Analytica data scandal of 2016. Now, if you are not familiar with what happened with the Cambridge Analytica story, essentially they were hired as a consultant out of the EU, and they tried to convince people to they what they would do is go in. I'm sorry, let me just focus. They would go in and essentially data mine. And data mining means going in and finding data about people from existing sources. This is where my unnatural fear of AI comes from. Is out in the world today, if you don't know this, and you probably do, you just maybe haven't thought about it, your data is in dozens of databases out there in the world. Your healthcare services, if you are so lucky to have healthcare, probably uses something that's run underneath by Epic Charts, EPIC, Epic Charts. They have a ton of your medical data. They are like a huge conglomerate of healthcare knowledge. And the people that own the data, or at least house the data, have a lot of power. So this is really important. But also think your DMV has data. Your insurance companies have a lot of data about you. We have voting data, and then we have everything. And this is what you really need to breathe in and think about. And this is actually what Gen Z is super angry about, if you think about it, is that everyone can be data mined from social media. And the reason Gen Z is upset about this is that they essentially entered the chat without giving consent. And I am absolutely guilty of this. I absolutely, especially the first, I'd say 6 or 7 years, I posted pictures of my kid because she was the best thing in my life and my joy. And I was just loving it. She was just tearing it up. And I loved talking about my kid. I have blogs up about her adventures, the whole thing. But at the beginning, she didn't ever consent. And when we finally started having conversations in this house about, Mom, I don't consent to you putting my image everywhere, I had a hard time. I mean, I was a little bit thick. I didn't say no, but I was angry because I thought, ah. And then it hit me. And then I finally got it. It's not my business. There is a line. It's the same thing. I think tons of folks know that I wasn't married at 34 and I didn't know I had infertility, but I decided to go ahead and use a sperm donor. And for me, the sperm donor at first in that story, it's the sperm donor I'm using. It's my story, right? I'm using a sperm donor. But as soon as my daughter was born, probably about 24 months after she was born, it hit me that I need to, now I have permission, so don't worry, but I needed to watch it because that was really now her story, not mine. For me, it was a thing that happened on the way to having a kid. It was like if your story was that you were at a biker bar, got really drunk and oopsies, meet, bam, bam. Yeah, like that. It was my story of using a donor was kind of incidental to the story. It really became Katie's story because it was her donor that she would have for her life. And her donor, who we actually know, but a lot of good things happened around this that are unusual and exceptional, and I will talk about them later, but not right now. But with her donor, I realized her story became hers, and her relationship with her donor was hers. Mine was secondary to her having the relationship. So that's a big thing when data mining happens, and that's why Gen Z is upset. I'll come back to the Gen Z story, is that for a lot of them, because they were literally born while we were all losing our minds with social media and finding our friends and reconnecting across miles and miles and years, they got outed and they got their pasts, their lives revealed. So all of that data out there now is what can be data mined. And when I talk about AI, I'm telling you that when these databases start to talk, they're going to know more about you than you're going to know about yourself. Because let's face it, keeping up as a human in America is really challenging. And I don't even know where everything is that I need to do and what I can do. But this AI will start to build an analysis of you, a profile of you. And that's what happened with Cambridge Analytica. And if you go back and look, there was a $5 billion fine in the UK for the stuff Cambridge Analytica did there. They obtained the data of more than 87 million Facebook users. That was then. That was 8 years ago, folks. So I want you to know that Elon's little stunt today and it's a voter registration site. So what he set up is a voter registration site. And when you go there, if you belong to a state where it's absolutely one color or the other, like there's just not a way the electoral college will bend either way, you don't get a special message. They're just forwarding onto your state's voter registration site. So if you're non-controversial and your vote, don't think your vote doesn't matter, by the way. I don't want you to assume this means the vote doesn't matter. It just means you're not their target. They are targeting people in swing states. So if you come up to a swing state, then they ask you a bunch of questions and they get all your data under the pretense of voter registration. Now, when I say all, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic because they don't get all your data. They get enough. That's what's important. They're getting enough of your data to be able to match you to the data banks they already have. And I really, these are very powerful people with tons of money, and people with marginal scruples will work for that money because people need money. So that's today's huge legal snafu. I think it should be criminal because it violates election law, which is to put out false election information. And they don't ever register. They're not registering anyone. They're merely a portal that's redirecting people. If you're lucky, redirecting to a voter site that's legit. If you're unlucky, you're getting looted. Your data is being stolen for nefarious purposes. So the number one site, no matter what, where you should go is voter.org. And this really brings up, for me, the agenda, the talking points, the things to think about right now are really around being such a careful consumer of information. So we say this all the time: trust but verify, trust but verify. No matter what, you owe it to yourself, including my podcast. You need to check the source, vet the source, verify it's actually who they say they are, and then you determine if you want to trust the content. Like I said, I try to post, and it's really my pledge is to post a companion blog with each of my podcasts with the data I'm referring to, so that you can go check my sources. That's important. That's an important value to me. That's probably because I'm a communicator, and in marketing, I can make up stuff to say, but it's not as persuasive as unless I bring the proof. So I'm encouraging you to really trust but verify, and really look into who's doing what to whom, and if this is the kind of information that seems legitimate to you. One of the biggest problems on any social media site is people reposting stuff and not doing the legwork to see if it's valid. So I myself have made this mistake. I've had to go back and delete a tweet because I'm like, you idiot. You thought you knew what you were doing, but it turns out this was bogus. We're seeing a lot of parodies going up. So you are responsible for doing the research, and you are responsible for what you put out in the world. So even your reposts and your tweets, those are the kind of things that are going into that giant database about you, the collective. We need a different word for the collective subconscious, because it's the collective data consciousness, or our collective subconscious based on data that is existing out there about us that we may not know. And in fact, I'm going to post this. There is a document that I extracted from Forbes magazine that lets you look up someone, and you should do this for yourself. I'm going to post on this companion blog my Word doc that you put into ChatGPT 4.0. And if you put that in with your name and your information, it's customizable. You'll see what it is when you download it. You can find out about yourself. It will go out and search what it can. And ChatGPT, I think, is up to early 2023 right now. Remember, ChatGPT is not necessarily current. It is. You can ask it what's your last data update, and that's how current it is on current events and that sort of thing. So it'll be a slightly older, but it's still really important if you're job hunting, if you're running for office, if you want to be on the school board. This is how that data subconscious sees you by using ChatGPT. You can identify how you're perceived out there. So it is pretty fun. I'll definitely put that in the companion blog. Download this sucker and load it into ChatGPT and see what happens, and have some fun with it. And then you can also ask it, where did it collect the data from? And you can figure out where you need to go you can even ask it to tell me, what do I need to go repair? I have fun with chat because I talk to it a lot. I'm so lonely. Anyway, that's today's pod. It's about sourcing, verifying, and trusting, and the big scandal of managing who your online person is and how to make sure it's who you want to be. And I think it's actually a really useful exercise because you're essentially becoming an advocate for your candidate. Let's make sure you look like a good advocate. Let's make sure you're showing up as a good advocate. So that's the scoop for today. Your little lesson, your little task for today is go check out your profile and start really looking about your sources. Trust and verify. Trust and verify. And tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday, we'll look at the role of the vice president and what we may want to care about as voters when it comes to looking at the vice president. I hope everybody has a great weekend. It's Friday. Yay! It's going to be a very exciting weekend and a very exciting week coming up. Bye, everybody. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate, and I'll be back with another episode really soon.